Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Sarika. Lovely to see you, and so excited to have a few extra faces with us today. Is keen that I'm keen to get into conversation with.
Exactly, exactly. So maybe before we start, ladies, welcome. We're going to introduce you in a little while and go into that in a bit more detail. But as is customary for Rensha and I, when we arrive in the space, is we take a moment of grace. So we invite you, if you want to put cameras off, you can. If you want to close your eyes or just cast your gaze downwards, you're welcome. Maybe just take a moment, 3 deep breaths to kind of arrive in the space with us. Thank you. It's always so interesting for me. As I heard that little email reminder, something go off, I went, it's so interesting because when we try and create that time for us, there's always something that's pulling our attention. Yeah. Yeah. So I think maybe an opportunity, Rencho, to just introduce today's topic before we kind of allow all the voices to arrive in the room. So this episode is going to be flighting or dropping around Easter, around the time where we're going to be going into. We have Family Day that we celebrate in South Africa, and so we thought that it might be fitting for us to talk about families and different family structures and how that works for us and where it doesn't work. So we've invited some of our friends to come have a conversation with us around this topic today. So I think, Rensha, is there anything you'd like to add before we hand over to the ladies to just introduce themselves?
Let's get into to seeing who we have here today.
Great. Anybody want to go first? Sorry.
I'll go,
I'll
it's
go first.
fine. I'm Melissa Osmond. I'm a single divorce mom staying in the Western Cape, and I'm a national partnership manager for an education and training company where we're upskilling youth. And I've got a 17-year-old son that's going to Melbourne High. So, yeah, lots of challenges these days. And thanks for the invite. It's nice to join all of you beautiful ladies today.
So let's start.
I'll go next. I'm Carla Delport. I am a business HR lead in a corporate retailer. Been with them for 23 years and still love my job. And yeah, I'm married and with 2 boys, which I'll get into a little bit later. I'm very excited to be here.
You're welcome, Colin.
Thank you.
Cass?
Hi, my name is Cass, and I also work for a corporate retailer together with Carla. I've been there for 5 years. I work as a product developer in foods. I am an inherited mom to a 12-year-old girl who is in grade 7. And yeah, excited to be here and to chat with you ladies today.
Rensha, I know that we didn't talk about this, but we know one another, but we haven't necessarily introduced ourselves into this space. So do you think it's worthwhile maybe giving that context here?
Yes, and also I think as I'm listening, I think I know some of you and some of you better than others. And so, Elista, I think I've known you for the longest. And as you just actually spoke about your son being 17, I couldn't believe that because I remember the day he was born. And he's always been a physically big child, even on that first day. But you're an amazing, amazing human being. And I just actually can't believe it's 17. Elista has blessed us with all the hand-me-downs. So thanks to her, I saved a lot of money on clothes, and so blessing in that. And my son is happy that he's not receiving any more, because for once he can actually buy his own clothes. So yeah, and then I think Carla and I have bumped into each other. So we know each other more in a professional setting, but we've bumped into each other next to the soccer field where our sons actually played soccer against each other. So yeah, it's interesting just how I think our lives intertwine, and how we have relationships or opportunities to form relationships across our professional and our personal contexts. So yeah, maybe that was just an immediate reflection. And Cassandra, so my son and my youngest son and your daughter is of similar age. So this grade 7 opportunities and challenges and stresses. So you're also probably getting stamps for documents as the high school applications open next week, and trying to do that amongst juggling all the work responsibilities. So just, I know we've invited you all today because of the things that you have in your parental role that are unique and different to us, but I can't help already feeling just how much we have in common. By the fact that we have the privilege of sharing both roles as parents and as professional working women. So lovely to be able to connect on both those.
Yeah, thanks, Rencha. I was just curious as you shared there. I didn't hear the context of your family. So I'm going to go, and then I'm going to hand back over to you around that context. And I think, so again, I'm familiar with Cass and Carla and Alyssa and I think we met at the launch a year ago. So I am, I guess, in what typically people used to call it typical, but I don't think it's typical anymore because there's so much diversity. Family structure in that, I'm married, I have my husband and my son who's 8 years old. And I say, we ask him, do you feel safe? Do you feel happy? And there's one more. And do you feel loved? And I feel like he's answering yes to those three things, I feel like we're doing a good job. But in between that safe and happy and love, there's so much other stuff, which, there's so much opportunity for things to go not so good sometimes. So yeah, so that's my context and appreciating maybe, he's the youngest of the lot in this conversation. And so I think some of you have already traveled the path that I'm yet to travel, the tweens and the teens and stuff like that. So I'm excited to hear where you're at and how things are going and pick up some tips around how I can manage as we move forward. Rensha, you want to tell us a bit about your lovely family?
Yes. Sorry, I didn't get that initially. So yes, I am also in a traditional family structure and married with 2 biological children of my own, ages 15, soon to be 16 and 13. And then I am also a stepmom or a half mom to a 26-year-old, 25, soon to be 26-year-old. That has never stayed in the home with us, but he is very much in my heart. And now he's now a girlfriend, is a big part of has taken up space in my heart too. So yeah, I think that's something I haven't necessarily shared before, but as I'm sitting here, I also realize that too is a part of my motherhood journey, although it is very, very different.
Thank you for sharing that. I find myself going, what, Rachel? How did I not know this about you?
You see, the 26-year-olds, they take care of themselves, and there's different challenges, which hasn't yet come up in the conversation. So there we go. We learn something new every time.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think as we kind of just enter that space, I'm just holding an awareness, Cass, particularly for you, I know you said you inherited the role. What is your preference when we talk about you and the lovely child that you look after? Do you guys refer to one another? Do you refer to her as your niece, or do you refer to her as your daughter? It's just that we get the languaging right, and we're being mindful of that.
So I refer to her as my niece. We don't do the mom daughter because
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Rancha, you want to kickstart us in terms of our conversation?
Yes, so I mean, we've already heard how your family structures are different, but maybe Yeah, I'm keen to hear, and specifically Cassandra, because I also don't know your story. Maybe a little bit more of a background around, yeah, what would make your family structure, in your view, unique from the so-called traditional one? And then, yeah, I think maybe also if you want to go there, because if you don't, we'll take you back there. Share with us some of the maybe unique challenges that has brought up for you in the journey so far. Just yeah, and because those are the things that we're really interested in hearing today. And again, in any particular order. So Cassandra, you're going to start for us.
Okay, yeah, happy to. So I think let me just give you guys some context also as to how I inherited this role. So my niece is my brother's daughter who stayed with, well, from the time that she was born, she stayed with my mom. So she's basically been my mom's child. And unfortunately, my mom passed on in 2021. So I am the only girl amongst three boys. So obviously, when my mom passed away, there was no way that my niece was going to stay with just boys in the house. So I had to take up that responsibility and say, you know what, it's not going to be feasible. I'm happy to take her on. And mind you, at that time, I had no clue in terms of which school she's going to. I had no plan, but because some choice had to be made about this child, I decided to do just that. And so I'm from KZN, so I flew her to Cape Town. I found a school for her, and she's been going to that school since 2023. And so it's been very challenging for me per se because I've been a single lady for my whole life, you know, and I've always stayed on my own. And now to have somebody to stay with who also has known me as the fun parts of her life. I mean, each time I went home, I was that fun aunt who always made sure that there was fun activities to do. We'd go out. And now when she moved here, I had to almost be that also strict parents to say, look, you can't do this. I had to, it was challenging. And for me to find that common ground and for her to also understand that was quite difficult. So that's, I think, part of the challenge that I've faced with her. But I think outside of that, looking at her parents, the fact that they are not together, they don't get along, and navigating through that when it comes to school holidays. And if this parent doesn't pick her up, it always comes back to me, and I have to be that comforting ground, and that also becomes quite a challenge. But I think the one thing that really helps is the fact that we're quite grounded when it comes to spirituality. We believe in God. We go to church. We pray every day. And it's one of the things that I said to her when she moved. I said, look, I'm not a mom. I don't know how to be a mom. And I'm not even trying to be a mom. I'm just really an auntie who loves you and who wants to make sure that you get to be the best version of yourself, because I see so much potential in you. And I'm going to do my best. Some days I'm going to be really horrible, forgive me, and some days I'm going to be really great, but that's just how life is.
Sure.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's my story.
Sure. Wow, that's incredible. And so there's a million questions and reflections that's coming up for me, and I trust that we will all get there. I can see that in the faces of the other ladies that are here too. And just great respect for you, Cassandra, for stepping into that space and for the way in which you've navigated that. To be completely honest, go, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to do my best and forgive me. And we're going to make this work together. I think that's incredible.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll share just about our construct. So, traditional family structure. Married happily to my best friend for 20 years in September. So it's a big one. And we have two boys. And Rensha, I didn't realize how similar in age our boys are actually. So I've got a 16-year-old, and then I've got a 12 about to be 13, which he reminds us that he's now a teenager. And both recently acquired girlfriends. So that's also an interesting moment in my life now as a mommy.
Gosh, is it happening? I'm sorry, I'm interjecting, but is it happening that soon?
12 years old, and he says most of his friends have girlfriends. There's a squad of them that are couples. So
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that's recent. And they are extremely sporty boys. So it's wonderful, but it's also, I think, one of the challenges, which I'll talk about later, which just makes life busy. It's very busy. And then we're very involved in church also. So we are executives at our church. And so we have lots of church commitments. And so the juggle is real. And then
Mm.
also just maintaining this rare jewel of family and the connection of it, like balancing that. So it's a beautiful dance we do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think just to bring back to my background as well, as I said, I'm a single mom with a 70-year-old. So yes, that brings its own challenges, I think, in life. Um, when it is like I've luckily got a big support system with friends and family. My parents live quite close, and I think if it wasn't for them and having that support, you can't juggle everything through life. And I also have a very demanding job as well, traveling quite a lot as well. So I rely quite a lot on them. And I think with a 17-year-old, I must say I'm very blessed. He is absolute sweetheart, loving nature, very supportive. I mean, for instance, I traveled now to Durban for 2 days. I came home last night to a plate of food that he put together for me. So, I mean, very caring in that aspect. But it is a juggling aspect of how do you bring up a man in this world, to have the values of a proper family and a stable family, but also being a single parent at the end of the day, and where your time is very demanding, with work and juggling all that act. And as you know yourself, Cassandra and Carla will probably know as well, Rensha and Sarika as well. It's not always easy, but you want that foundation for them as well, to have that stability, that love, know that they cared about, and installing that values, that this is what life is actually about at the end of the day. It's not always easy, but we do it to the best of our capabilities at the end of the day. Yeah.
Thank you, Lister. So as I'm listening to you, I think there's also just an awareness that comes up for me around single parents. As much as there's a label or a name for that, there's also a large variety of difference within that. I mean, there are single moms where the father is very actively involved, and kind of the child spends a lot of or equal amount of time. Then there's others where the father isn't involved at all. And so I know you've had different realities around, based on how far Justin's father is physically stayed from you. Yet I think that there is still a relationship with his father at this point in time, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, no, he's got a very close relationship with his dad, although it is more a case of I'll see you on my terms when I can see you, according to their schedules, because it's now friends going out. As you said, girlfriends are getting involved now as well. But luckily his dad is involved in his life to a certain extent. He also lives now luckily close. He lived in Hermanus before, so it was quite a bit of a traveling. So he does stay now quite closer, which makes things easy as well. But unfortunately, in that aspect, I don't have much other support. I am Justin Lee's main support, and then my parents as well. So you do have that challenges, but you work around it. And at least, as I say, I'm very blessed that I've got a stable, loving child, got good values. He knows what is right and wrong in life. So at least I don't have that challenges of someone that's a complete rebel at this age. I think that was one of my big blessings in life, and one of my fears as well, because I mean, if you hear what the friends do, the things that he's very stable and he's very mature in his thinking process as well. So I must say, I'm very blessed in that aspect. Yes.
Sarika, I'm going to hand over to you in terms of guiding us in terms of the next question you want us to deep dive into.
I'd love to, and I'm having a moment of appreciation, and I know you touched on it earlier, but the representation here is so interesting now that we're hearing a bit more about each person's context, a bit more of the detail than just the headline. And I'm holding an awareness that this conversation is just based on our personal experiences. So, like you said, even in single parenting, you've got co-parenting, you've got parents families who the parents are still married, but maybe, lots of people go to work overseas. So you've got one parent overseas and another here. I'm also holding awareness that same-sex partnerships is, something that perhaps we haven't got. So I think when this podcast goes out, I think for people to also engage with us that come from those different contexts to help us understand the challenges, etc. Before I move on to the question, I think, Carla, when you shared, you said, you'll come to the challenges, but we haven't had an opportunity to hear. So based on your sort of family construct, what are some of those unique challenges do you find that you're facing? Because, yeah, you've got two boys, and Rachel's got two, but she's got a girl and a boy. So that, that whole dynamic can be quite different. So maybe
Yeah.
tell us a bit more before we go into diving deep on the other questions.
Yes, of course. So I think one of the two challenges we face is the busyness. So because there's sports or because there's practices or whatever, you're often finding that you're driving kids around and that's all you're doing. You're like dropping them here, fetching them here, needing to take them here.
The soccer mom,
Oh,
literally.
soccer, rugby, cricket. I mean, there's lots of it. They do all. So we're running around in the car. Okay, who needs to fetch him from youth? Who's gonna? And I think one of the challenges is in the busyness and in the dropping transactional things that are happening. How do you stay connected to them? Like, because they are busy and they're doing things. And so that was a big thing for us as a family. Like, how do we stay connected? How do we create openness, conversation, that we know what's happening in their lives, that we're connected to what they're struggling with? Um, and how do we build relationship even in the busyness we're driving here or we're going here or whatever? And how do we create that connection? What do we do intentionally? And that's one of the things I'll talk about later, about what did we do intentionally to stay connected as a family so that it's always open to us in our relationship. I think the second challenge, and I feel comfortable to share it, my husband was diagnosed with cancer in 2021. And so it was a bit of a reality for us, a reality shock for us about how do we make today count and like how do we make life and today that is so fragile just today's gift. And so we've got a motto in our family that we make memories. And so it's a big thing for us in our family that whatever we do, we're going to make memories and we're going to live for the moment. And it's something that we've done just because, yeah, you just don't know. So it's something special to us, and the boys have caught on to it as well.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Carla. When you were speaking, I could feel the emotion kind of rise in me because I remember, when I mean, we were still working in the same company at the time. And I want to say your journey, yours and Eugene's and the boys has been so inspirational in terms of, how intense it was and I think where you guys have gotten to. So thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
The other thing I want to maybe latch on to is, you talked about one of the challenges is staying connected. And I think, we all probably experience that in different ways. And I love this thing of a family motto, I think it's such a great idea. And that's one of the things I'm definitely taking out now of that sharing is going, we kind of do something, but we do different things. And then you touched on I think the transport aspect or the driving aspect in particular. And Rensha and I often on time because we're around that. So, and Rachel knows this. We have our son now goes to Montessori, which is, about 30 Ks away from us. So 20 Ks, it's a half an hour drive. And it's like, do I let somebody drive him? Because on the one hand, the driving is hard, but that time to have conversation with him and to influence, and Alistair, you talked about that, to influence who he's growing up to be is
Right.
so important.
Right.
It's so valuable in this world where we are so busy. So I'm really holding awareness of that, and I think, I think that's really, really important for us. I'm taking a moment to kind of just go, where do we go with the conversation? And I think one of the questions we planned, Renshaw, was around, how, based on these challenges that you've shared, whether they be, Cass, for you, how do you draw the line between being fun and being serious or, disciplining? And Carla, you've shared now yours and Alista, in terms of the single parenting, but having the support. How have you overcome some of those challenges And what are some of those learnings that you'd like to share with us, which we can then learn from one another around?
So for me, it's really just been about having a conversation. I think I was speaking to a friend last week, and I was saying to her, every time that there's, I'd say, an altercation or there's just a misunderstanding between my niece and I, because she's also at that tender age of now transforming into being a teenager. She's very responsible. She's got great leadership skills. And so at home, though, I always say there has to be a line because I am the adult. And as much as she has all those skills, but she also needs to listen to me and how I want or how she's supposed to do things. And that's sort of where we sort of struggle. But what I was saying too and sharing with a friend of mine is that in those moments, I also get an opportunity to almost revisit my childhood and sort of get healing based on how my mom raised me. Last week, particularly, I had a moment where I was trying to make sure that before she leaves for camp, her room is neat and tidy. She's done what she needs to do, and in having me repeat myself and say, please make sure this is done. Da, 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 da. I could see she started pulling her face, and at that moment when she pulled her face, I got upset because in my mind it's like I'm trying to make sure that you do things properly because this is going to set you up to be a better human being. But when she left and I was reflecting, I almost had to sit back and ask myself, like, what was I trying, or how could I have said that or articulated that in a way that was not going to be me being defensive or me be like giving her an instruction, but almost just making her understand that, look, this is the way of life and this is how you need to sort of do things for reasons A, B, C, and D. And it got me thinking about times when my mom wanted to say something to me and how certain things came across. And it was really just the light bulb moment. Like, oh my gosh, when my mom used to say this, what she was actually trying to say is this. But because she had no background in terms of, I mean, she was doing the best that she could with what she had and what she knew. This is how it ended up. And I literally took a moment and I was like, oh, girl, wherever you are, I forgive you. Now I get it.
I love that. Oh, I love that.
So yeah, it's I think it's just really having those conversations where we sit and we engage but I mean, like I say, it's not easy. Some days you can and some days it's like, okay, we need to have that again. But yeah.
Yeah. I'm just before we go on to the next person, I think I'm just taking out of that just that the moment of laughter that we all had is that commonality of how becoming a parent makes you realize and be so grateful for your parents, believe it or not, because you realize, oh, they were trying to do the same thing. And my mom used to often say, when you become a parent, you'll understand. Well, listen.
Yeah. And don't we sometimes just hold on to, okay, I know they don't understand now, but maybe one day, may they? Yeah.
That's true.
Absolutely. So I'm just holding awareness around the broader conversation that we're wanting to have around, commonalities and unique kind of challenges. So yeah, I mean, Alista, would you like to go next with some of your unique challenges and how I mean, you talked about some of the challenges, but how you overcome them and what are your learnings been?
Yeah, I think sometimes you just have to take a step back, as a parent, because there's a very thin line of being his friend and being the parent with the stricter side. And I think one of the big learnings that I've learned out of my upbringing him as well is be authentic, be yourself. If you got a bad day, express you got a bad day, have that conversation. It's for me, it's also we've got a very open relationship. So if I say something or if I lose my cool, because I do sometimes, then it's like you take a step back, you reevaluate. And if I wasn't wrong, I apologize. And I will go to him and say, look, Justin Lee, I'm sorry, mom was wrong. This is what happened. I had a bad day. So that he can think, because I think it's good for them to also learn that you're human. You got feelings, you got your bad days, you got your sad days. he's got also a very strong personality. So I think it's also learning to deal with that, where you don't push certain boundaries, and it's like stepping back and like, okay, Justin Lee, well, think about this, and rather put it across to him to think what his actions is, to think how would he react if it was the same situation. And it's difficult. It's not always easy, but I think through the years, I've learned how to manage him. And like I said, for me, it is just always bringing back to the level to say that this is what's happened, this is the reaction, this is why I reacted this way, and take responsibility for his actions as well. I think that's also a big one for me. And through that, we overcome our challenges, because we don't always see eye to eye on things. But I think it is just always just look at the holistic way about things, and take it from all aspects. But that honesty, openness, showing, if you've got a real feeling, I think that is what brings us very close at the end of the day. And like Kala also said, it's making that memories, take time out, sit with them. I think we get so used to it, and it's one of my big challenges is you're on the phone and it's someone comes in, someone calls and they want to talk to you. Is putting time aside and actually just focus on them, and just zone in onto them. What do they want to tell you? Take cognizance of what they're telling you. Because I think we're so used to juggling the balls, like it's phone calls, it's work, it's this, and you're listening to them and they want to tell you things as well. And I think that helps as well, especially at dinner times. We make an effort to sit together to discuss, no phones, no contact, no TV, just have that open conversation. And it definitely works. It's spending that family time with each other. And I think that's brought us also closer, but also overcoming a lot of challenges in the long run, because you know what's going on in their lives as well, and how they feel, where they're at, what is their challenges they're experiencing, and then you can also support them in that aspect. So yeah, that helped a lot in my life for me.
Thanks, Alista. What I'm taking out of your sharing is almost how putting in the almost rituals kind of lays the foundation for when the poo-poo hits the, the proverbial, is come upon those difficult, challenging times that you've almost got that foundation, and that opportunity for conversation, which I think is something that's so important. And what I'm taking out of what you said and Cass said and Carla, you touched on as well, is being authentic with our kids, being open. And I think that's definitely been a shift over generations. It kind of, I think as a generation right now, we are a lot more open, we're a lot more sharing of where we're at, our vulnerabilities, our emotions, etc. And I know a good friend of mine often says to me, she says, I think it's so amazing that you apologize to Mika, because same thing, if I've done something and I realize, I go, hey babe, I'm really sorry. And I can't remember my parents ever apologizing to me,
I just want to say quickly, I think we all in such a mode of flight and fight mode the whole time, to survive, to give the best to our kids, to our families. And someone actually, and I think that's where the pin dropped for me, is they said to me, think the way you speak to your child. Don't always do the negative. Do it in a positive way. And that's what we're trying to do. And the same with Justin, if he talks and I'm like, no, Justin, it's not going to be a bad day. It's going to be a good day. Positive thoughts create positive energy. And that makes a huge difference in our lives. And when someone brought that to my attention, it was like really like reevaluating the way we talk, the way we approach things. And it makes a huge difference in our life of how we view our daily lives and the future and how we just think of things in general.
Rensha, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so Alista, I think just because I know you, when you spoke about being authentic and honest with your child, I think it triggered a memory for me and of something I saw you do, which was a real example for me. And I think it was the last time we actually saw each other. You shared in Justin's presence how he was blessed with this amazing opportunity to go and do his black belt graduation in Japan, and which is incredible. I think that's any child's dream. And I remember your real challenge with the single income household you couldn't afford to send him, and your entire being wanted it for him. And I loved how, I think what he was 14 at the time, 14, 15 maybe at the time, you presented that reality of, I really want him to go. And the financial commitment to that is significant, amongst the fact that I'm struggling to find work and all the household things, and how that allowed him to actually eventually step into that space to go, Mom, even if you can make a plan, I actually don't think it is worth it. It is not something in the bigger scheme of things that I think would justify the costs associated with that. And at that age, for him to come to that insight, I just thought was amazing. And I want to honor you for the way in which you've done that, because it's not about burdening him with it, but you didn't hide it from him. You presented the reality to him, and you shared with them where you were. And I know that you would have, being the person you are, you would have raised the funds and you would have made it happen. But the fact that he could see the whole picture and eventually come to that decision, to me, just is a testimony of how he is growing because of the manner in which you raise him. And I think so, for me, if I listen to all of your stories, there's something about the uniqueness. Carla, your husband's diagnosis, and that dark place that you've gone through, and Cassandra, that suddenly the changes in your life and in her life, and Elista, all this you've navigated. There's something about these deep waters that we walk through that actually instills something unique and special in us or in our children that we wouldn't have had if it wasn't for that. And that's just something that I'm seeing today as an appreciation for. Yes, it's tough and it's excruciating, and at the time we wouldn't pick it. And when we look back, there's actually so many gifts because we remain wholehearted in that moment, even if our wholeheartedness doesn't look perfect and it doesn't look pretty. We do our best and we keep showing up. And then there is something beautiful that can be born out of it, or that not can be, that gets born out of it.
Yeah. I know that we're probably going to have to start rounding up very soon, but Carla, I'm pretty sure that perhaps you haven't had the chance to share what you do in relation to your obstacles. So maybe just briefly, if you can do that before we kind of circle to rounding off.
Sure. I think one of the things with having boys, and those who have boys here on this platform can maybe relate, but you ask them a question and everything is fine, or you get a one-word answer, and it's difficult. Yeah, and it's difficult to dig behind that fine and good and okay words. And so one of the things we did, which also dealt with the busyness and the staying connected, and it was from small. I think you spoke about it, that dinner time is sitting around the table, or like gathering around the table. So something we did when they were very little was every dinner time we would share our happy and sad moment for the day. And I mean, it was happy moments, and then at sad moments, like we were playing during break and they didn't award me the goal that I shot because they felt like I was, I don't know what, but, and you dig deep and you're like, why was that your sad moment? I felt like I was bullied, or I felt like they didn't see me, and it was something small that we did, happy and sad moments, when they were very little. I mean, somebody used to, the game was, if you put up your hand first, then you can call happy and sad moments for that night. But I think it was so cute because we got to hear their hearts at dinner time, and it helped us connect with our boys beyond a fine, okay, good word. And we since then have bought these little cards. It's called conversation starters for families. And it's so cute because at dinner time, we go around and everybody can pick a card. Tonight it's Eli's turn to pick up a card. Tomorrow it's Cole's turn. And it's silly questions. It's like, if you were to go on a holiday, what was the one thing you would not leave behind? But it just creates connection with us as a family, with the boys, to the point that doing that has now, they came to us to say, Mom, I'd like to ask a girl to be my Valentine, or there's a girlfriend. But it was that platform that we built from a young age around a dinner table having conversations that created this openness and this, yeah, this relationship that they can share the hard stuff and the difficult and the awkward stuff with us also. And so, yeah, it's not normal because they invite their friends and they're like, oh, we love how you sit around the dinner table and chat. But it's something that worked in our family. And yeah, it's just a gift in terms of keeping connection.
Thank you, Carla. Rachel, what's happening for me is I'm going, I don't want this conversation to end. And I'm so appreciative that, we do need to bring it to an end. And what I'm also kind of, if I step back and kind of go meta awareness of this conversation, we kind of said it's going to be around family and family structures. Um, and what I'm hearing is there are some unique challenges, but a lot of them are common challenges. And what we probably haven't touched on is extended support. So like as you guys were talking, I was going, Alyssa, when you said, oh, and I've got lots of, and I went, oh, I've got my mom. Gosh, what would we do without her? Um, so I know that we didn't necessarily, and this is the organic nature of our conversations, we go where the energy is. And it sounds like as opposed to talking to the family structure, what's kind of come up is really around how we live within the kind of sort of the nuclear structure that exists in our space. And yeah, I'm really definitely taking out some of those things that, we can work with. But that meta awareness is saying to me, there might be a mom, a parent, a dad, whatever out there listening to this going, oh, this all sounds so glass half full, because that's what I'm going. I'm like, oh, we haven't even gone to the hard stuff here. So I guess as we do our closeouts, and reflecting on this conversation, if I'm that parent out there listening to this podcast and going, well, these women, they all got it all together and their lives are so awesome, maybe sharing with us either what you would say to them, or maybe just giving a little bit of an example of something that is still hard, that you are still grappling with, so that it's a bit of a balanced sense, because, I know that we all have that, but I'm also kind of sitting with that awareness of this conversation. How's that sounding for us? Yeah, good. Carla, you were the last one speaking, so do you maybe want to go and then we'll
Yeah,
go?
I think, I mean, the hard times are definitely there, and the hard times are there often. It's a hard job parenting. But I think the one thing I would say to that parent that is struggling or that is battling with something, I really want to encourage them to reach out, because I think sometimes we try to do it on our own and we try to get it right all on our own. And I don't think any of us have ever gotten it right on our own. And I want to encourage that person, reach out to a friend, reach out to a family member, reach out and share it, because often you're so stuck in it that you can't sometimes see the wood for the trees, and just a different perspective or somebody alongside you just gives you hope to get through it. So yeah, reach out.
Thank you, Carla. Alyssa, and then I think Cass.
Yeah, I think for me it is, and that's what like Carla said, embrace the memories, embrace being a parent. It's not easy. And we're not perfect. I think that we all need to know. We want to be the perfect parent, but I don't think there is such thing as a perfect parent out there. And there is support. Reach out, use your friends, use connections that we can support wherever we can. I think that's why we're here. That's why you got your organization going as well. It's this whole support system that is out there. And yeah, just be yourself. It's not easy, but at the end of the day, when your kids are all grown up, you're going to take back to all those moments you had seen as challenges. And then you're going to laugh at it and say, you know what, I've made it. So I think that's my where we're at. And that's what I'm taking from here, is just enjoy every single moment, because they grow up so fast. Time goes by so quickly, and tomorrow is not guaranteed. So make every day special.
Thanks, Alyssa. Cass.
Sure. I think for me, the one thing that I would say to that parents who are struggling is it's a journey, and no one is perfect. To Alyssa's point, no one is perfect. I think sometimes as parents, what we try and do is live our imperfections through the kids. So I think it's good for us as parents to remember that no one is perfect, and expecting perfection from our kids is actually not fair. We need to embrace our kids for who they are and nurture that and try and grow that. And also I'd say this was said to me by one of my mentors. She said to me, because I was chatting about the journey with my niece also, and she said to me, think about the day when she's 21 and she's holding that mic. What is it that you would like for her to say about you through that journey? And how do you work back for her to be able to say all those things on that day of the 21st? And I think that really stuck with me. And it's one of the things that I try to do every day in raising her and through her journey, and just, working with her for that day when she's 21. What is it that I would like her to say she would have achieved, or yeah, she would have benefited from this relationship?
Oh, so much wisdom in all of this. Rachel, do you want to share yours? And I'll share mine and I'll hand back to you to close out. You're on mute at the moment.
Sorry, my bird was chirping, so I put myself on mute and I forgot. I love that, Cassandra. And as you said that, I remember having done that with my stepson too, where in those moments where I was pulled into something and I felt myself not enjoying who I was, to stop and go, wait. One day, and so I use his wedding to go, one day at his wedding, how would I want him to speak about me and the influence that I've had in his life? And that shifts my perspective on really deciding which battles am I going to pick, or how am I going to show up in this? And so, yeah, that is really a powerful way to manage myself too. So something that came up for me that I heard yesterday, and I think in this conversation, and maybe it was about reaching out, Carla, when you said it, was that what we feel when we're not coping is often shame, because we shame ourselves for not being good enough, not being the perfect parent. And I think it's when we buy into that we allow that shame to grow. And so I was listening to a Brené Brown podcast yesterday where she said that the only way to kill shame is to bring it to light, because shame feeds on the fact that it stays hidden and that we try and hide it. And that's for me why that reaching out in that moment where I'm feeling like I'm failing as a parent and bringing it to light, sharing it with someone else, and then having that someone be graceful towards me to go, yeah, it's tough and it's okay. And you're not a failure and you will get through this too. It kills the shame. And it allows me to just have a tough day, not to have a tough day filled with shame. And so that's my takeout from this. And because then I think we can speak the positive, as Elista has said. And so, and maybe just one more thing that Carla, you reminded me of, as well as those practices that we build in, and a practice that I've forgotten actually, that when my kids were very, very small, I think even before they really had a comprehension, I wrote some character traits about them that I believe to be true for them. And we've established the habit when I put them to bed at night, I pray for them and I speak those words over them. It's about 7 or 8 for each of them. And they are now so conditioned to it that even my daughter at 16 goes, Mama, jy het nooit my rympie vir my gesê nie. It's spoken that over me. And to me, it is a spiritual practice of speaking those things over them to be true. Even if they have been naughty and they haven't been cute. And I still speak it over to them to go, you are good, you are kind, you are generous, you are clever, you are handsome. I speak it over them for them to know that remains true. So yeah, that I think is the other half of it. Can be a bad day, and I still hold on to those things, and I give that life, and whilst killing the shame. So that's me, Sarika.
So I think being succinct and pithy is not necessarily my strength. So I'm gonna try. I think what I'd say to that parent is something that I get from a lady called Dr. Becky, who's one of those parenting experts as well. And I'm going to tweak it a bit, because she says what she reminds herself, encourages us to do is, I'm a good parent having a hard time. And I don't believe that there's such a thing as a good parent. I just think there's a real parent. Yeah, we all do the best with what we have. So I think some kind of tweaking of that, I am a whatever parent going through a hard time or having a hard time, I think is just so much allowing. And there's for me this surrender in that. There's an allowing for whatever emerges, and there's trust in that it's going to shift. These things are not permanent. So I think that would be my guidance to parents and to us, when we're in those moments that feel like the doldrums, to go, I'm great. I'm a great parent, because I don't think there's a good parent, because good sounds like good and bad. But I think if you're a great parent, you're always doing your best. I'm a great parent and I'm having a tough time right now. And I think that's absolutely okay, because we all do. So I think just reminding ourselves of that for me would be the big thing. And then I think a couple of things that you all touched on as we went through it is focusing, choosing to focus on the good. And Carla, you guys talk about what was good and what was bad. So we do gratitude since Miko was about 2 or could speak every night in bed. So what are the things that you're grateful for? And I think even for us, when we're in those moments of like, God, these are all the things that are wrong. And I found myself doing it the other day. I woke up and I went, oh, this is going to be a day. And I caught myself and I went, okay, and what's good about today? Healthy. I've got a family that's amazing. I got, and all of a sudden, just that shift kind of allows an internal shift in me. And so how I show up and how I respond to situations also shifts. So that would be mine. Thanks, Rensha.
There we go. Thank you so much. And I know we're at time, so I think in closing, I'd really just like to thank each and every one of you that have taken time out today, amongst all the balls that you are juggling, to come and contribute to this community. And thank you. I do wish we had triple the amount of time, because there's so much more that I know I can learn from each one of you. And maybe in future we can have you back and to come and contribute that. But in the meantime, please remain in relationship with us. And let's keep lifting each other up. Let's keep inspiring each other. That's definitely what those that I do know do for me already. And Cassandra, I definitely, being the first time I met you today, I am inspired by the little bit that I've heard here. So I hope that as others are listening to this conversation, each and every person is also touched and inspired by what they've heard here today. Thank you very much, everyone.